Yes, so I'm Jill Clarke. I started using Joomla when Joomla 1.5 was still in beta. But I didn't know that. I just installed it and started building websites in it, and it didn't let me down. It worked pretty well, and just have loved Joomla after I taught myself HTML. When my kids, when I was stuck at home with kids and couldn't keep my IT career up to date really any other way except for doing it myself. So children are nearly 19 and 16 and a half now. So 16 years I've been out of the full-time paid workforce, just noodling away at home doing my own thing. Joomla was the best thing I ever found, best thing since sliced bread. But I mostly make websites for not-for-profit organisations that are running on a budget and interested in sustainability, and a lot of the websites I'm involved in building are to do with local food sustainability, land care and those kinds of topics. So I get to sort of work in the things I'm interested in and still use my IT skills by using Joomla. One of the things I wanted to ask you, hands up who's looking after a couple of Joomla websites, or anyone doing things for not-for-profits? Fair number. Yeah, non-profit, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, and just personal sites is a good thing as well. How many of you have already tried a few extensions out? And good experiences or bad experiences? Bit of mixed. Well, yeah, it's all a learning curve, isn't it? So we'll talk about some of those issues, and some of them you may well already know. I went to Brian Tieman's workshop on Joomla 3 yesterday, so I'm thinking I'll get myself a head start on moving things into that. I had actually downloaded it and installed it just recently. It's Joomla 3.02, which worked very well. I know when I tried installing it when it was 3.00, had quite a few problems and issues and things, and it was still fairly new. So we're already in 2 more iterations. That's looking pretty good and relatively stable. So they keep telling me it'll be changed. But one of the things Brian stated was that Joomla was designed to be extended from day one. So there's even arguments about the couple of components that it does ship with, that they shouldn't be in there, that it should be just shipped as the bare bones CMS, and you add everything in. So when we came up with this idea for a presentation, there's 10,000 of them in the JED at the moment. I hadn't done a presentation for a long time, and I looked at the slides, and they talk about a kitten dies every time someone runs a PowerPoint presentation. And I must admit, I find the PowerPoint presentations sometimes laborious. So I jumped online and looked at what Joomla Day, or Joomla International Conference in America had done late last year, and found someone who was doing a presentation in this new thing called Prezi. So I thought, oh well, I'll have a look at that. So this is my first attempt at a presentation in Prezi. So I don't think it's any excellent example of how to use the Prezi software, but it just comes up. Yeah, I've got one.
Bonus.
I've got 2. Yeah, I thought I'd give it a whirl, and just the way it sort of zooms around the slides, and so instead of just being boring dot point slides, which is what I started writing, it comes up with all these sort of pretty pictures and zooms in and out, and I don't know, just a bit more visually interesting. So we'll give it a whirl. So it comes up with a little template saying you can sort of give your presentation like you're walking down a path, but the amount of information you give in these technical overviews doesn't fit into that little picture. So this is the overview, how to choose. JED's a bit of jargon everybody around here uses because we're all Joomla people. Joomla Extension Directory. We just love our jargon. Yeah, what did they say? 10,000, over 10,100 or something? You can't put the number in there, they just keep putting more in. These are the different kinds of extensions, all those little coloured dots you get. Is that coming out very blurry? Which we'll talk about in a little bit more detail. I'm going to run through this pretty quickly because I'd rather leave more time at the end for any specific questions. So I might just whiz through these slides, and it'll be more interesting, I think. How do you choose? Advice of the many, so you can actually look at most favoured extensions when you're in the JED, and places like here where you've got people using them all the time. People will have their favourite extension and will recommend that one to you. There may be others that have better functionality for you, but sometimes you just use the one you're familiar with. People will recommend the one they're familiar with, whether it's the best one for you or not. But generally, if people have used it and it's safe and it works well, they're all good reasons. Yes, so then the other technical issue of will it actually run on your site and how you find that out, and the age-old advice. If you want to test it out, it's not real smart testing it out on a live site, depending on how important your live site is, and all about backups, which they're actually running in the other session at the moment, which is a bit of a shame. So, the different types, this is pretty dry and boring. I've got to go up to this one now. So, the decision of what will I add to my website, if you're talking to a client or you're just your own personal choice, what else do I want to see on here? Of that 10,000 on the JED, a huge number of them apparently are weather ones, which I found quite amusing, which for Australia, yeah, for here we probably need it. Shopping carts, really common if you're building things. Oh, I didn't get to put in my little pictures for Twitter and other social stuff. But Facebook and Twitter are the main two that I can think of and I use. Tag clouds are often very useful and good for doing ways of sorting information on your website. Image gallery is probably, for personal use, just about number one thing that everyone wants, to show off their photos and show that the pictorial information in a useful way. You can add comment systems and give people the ability to do comments. When people are talking about should I use Joomla, should I use WordPress, should I use Drupal, WordPress has got the blogging software built in. I mean, Joomla just simply blogs by the way you organise your information. I think WordPress or Drupal certainly has comment systems and tag systems and things all built in. And so when I've found with those users, when they come across to Joomla, they'll say to me, isn't it a shame it doesn't have a comment system or it doesn't have a tag system? And I say, not a problem, and you just go to the JED, find a good quality one and put it in, extend your Joomla setup, and everybody's happy. Now, this is probably the most important thing I've got to tell you today. That every single extension you add to your Joomla core setup has to be kept up to date. And when people's websites are hacked, it's almost always, rarely Joomla, it's almost always an extension you've put in at some point when you've thought, oh, that looks pretty, or that's interesting, I'll try that out, and then you forget about it and you don't really pay much attention to it, yet it's sitting there in your code, and then, you know, they go to version 2 and then version 2.5, and then there's a big thing coming out, there's a big security release because we've got a problem, and yours is still sitting there without you really realising it in version 1.2 or something, and that's the one that the hackers are attacking. So you come to your website one day and it's been hacked. So I think, you know, one of Brian's pieces of advice, he runs his own blog site about Brian Tooman, and he runs it pretty much Joomla core and hardly anything else added in, just a few necessities, which I'll talk about later. So yeah, big decision. A lot of people I've worked with, you build them the Joomla site, they realise the power of it and what it can do and what else you can be displaying and showing to your group or, you know, or your friends or your family, and they just go mad like a kid in a candy box and add everything to it, which is then a really difficult big site to maintain and a big site to back up and all that kind of thing. So it is an issue. So in many respects, yes, you can extend it, but really the advice is choose very carefully and add as little as possible. And if you can make the Joomla core do it, it's probably better to do it that way. So Joomla version 3 and pretty much 2.5 have a lot of things built in that you used to have to add on for, like image gallery. You can almost do away with image galleries. You can just use images and use settings and so forth for the article manager and the blog view in version 2.5 and version 3 that lets you display your images really nicely without any added software. So yes, here we are, the types of extensions. Now, plugins this is really just all Joomla jargon. I suppose the more you hang around inside the software, the more you get used to all this jargon. Little helpers, I call them. So there's plugins sitting there running that come shipped with the core, like the email cloaking. Did people know that? That when you type an email address in your article, you're pretty safe because there's this little plugin in the background that obfuscates it. I love that word. Can't spell it. Yeah, so when if you go and look at the list of plugins, you see content system editor. You see different kinds of plugins, so the people who've written them are basically just sorting them based on purpose. And if you ever want to get into writing code, that's a good start. If you want to actually write something to do a particular thing for yourself in Joomla, you might start with something like a simple plugin and add that to your setup, and then be like no number and turn it into a whole business after you've written a few plugins and they're really useful and everybody else wants them. Oh, so there's an example of the plugin manager showing the email cloaking. Quite often in 1.5 you quite often installed things and it installed plugins that it needed to use to run, but you also had to go in and then switch on the plugins. In version 2.5 and version 3 they almost invariably write them so that the whole package installs the component or the module and all the plugins it needs, and then by default it turns them on for you. So sometimes, yeah, I think in most cases I can think of that is helpful and useful. Rarely do you get stuck where something's been turned on when you would really want it turned off. So as we, the Joomla versions move through, the quality of what's provided to us by these people building add-ons gets better and better. So modules are like a little mini function, but also really to do with placement on the site as well, about where something might exist on the site. And components are the big things that run, like online shops or a booking system or your photo gallery or a large social networking thing like Joomla Social or Community Builder. Has anyone used Community Builder? The more you see with what's coming with Joomla Core, the more you think maybe you don't need that anymore. But I have used Community Builder from the start, and it's a very useful component, but massive to get your head around. A lot of settings to put in there. Yes, who's multilingual? Not me. Just amazing. Yeah.
This would be interesting. Yeah, is it? I don't know. Can I ask? Sorry.
Yeah.
Let's say I built the whole website. I have it, for example, in Greek. I want to make the whole website but then in English. So is it something like this that it can automatically copy?
No, the way to do it automatically is to use an external thing like Google Translate or Alta Vista Babelfish or something. But to do it inside the website, you'll have to duplicate your content so that you've rewritten your Greek one, another article in English, and then use these settings inside the language component for when they're displayed.
Lots of content, so I cannot just copy the whole site.
It won't translate it for you. Is that what you're asking? It won't automatically translate it. You have to have it translated. Somebody should translate it for you.
Well, I could do it, for example, but so I have to copy each
Yeah,
article.
we'll come back to this specific at the end, otherwise I'll run out of time and going through these. So, but yeah, language, Joomla's amazing, I think, that it's got that power and a lot of languages, and all volunteers putting in their time to create all the different language packs that you can get access to for free. There's also little specific components that are tools, which are to do with actually tweaking things inside Joomla itself and tweaking the code, which I don't think I've used. And then you get specific extensions. So there's a whole lot of sub-extensions for a big thing like Community Builder or a big thing like K2 or a big thing like Joomla Social. So the big component's been written, and then people have thought up other little add-ons within that component. So you'd have to have the big component installed, and then you can install something specific for that component. Sometimes they run inside the component, sometimes they're still run from the main Joomla extension part. Now, I think the first time when you first install Joomla and you want to start mucking around with all these add-ons, for me the most fun add-on was the templates, like changing the dresses on your dress-up doll. You'd say, what does it look like with this template? What does it look like with this template? And that's where the module positions come in, when it's sort of talking about modules being little bits of work or a calendar or something that sits on your site. The template defines where all those module positions are. All of this was always very important to me when I was building Joomla. I think it's becoming less and less important as they move to the Bootstrap style websites and the websites being scalable and so forth for the different screen sizes and all the rest. So module positions was always something that I looked up on every template to make sure it was going to have enough for me to have the flexibility to do what I wanted to do. But I think, again, all the builders of templates are well aware of that now, and they all give you many options to move around in, and the Bootstrap lets you do that. So I think I just had a picture of, that's a Joomla Bamboo Zen grid layout kind of module positions. Of course, you don't have to use all of them. You're just using the ones that you need, and the flexibility of how they lay out. So if you have something in along the grid 1, 2, 3, 4 line and so forth, it lays them out beautifully on the page for you. So, yep, just different pretty templates. Joomla Bamboo, Joomla Shack, which is another one that I like to use. That's one of my clients who does not like spending money, didn't want his logo redone. It doesn't look quite right up there. It doesn't look so bad on the big screen. Just a black background. So then the next question is, of all those components you can choose and all those templates you can choose, you've got free ones and you've got commercial ones. How do you choose? Why would you spend the money getting a commercial one when they can give you most of what you need to do for free? And if you're working for a not-for-profit and your budget's really an issue, that can be a real positive. You can probably get most of what you need done and set up a pretty good site using free templates, free components, and have to pay for very little. Although even the commercial ones, I must say, are not really very expensive. $100 for a piece of software is not a lot of money, really. Well, I suppose it depends on how much you've got to use it. For a one-off for a little church or something, that might be considered. Yeah, so the free ones are almost like try before you buy. You can download the free extension, try it out, have a look at their graphs and see what the added functionality you get if you have actually put the money down. More and more, though, people are looking at when you get the paid version of the extension, you get the support. And for me, that's often quite important. It's great being able to, well, it depends on whether you install it and it all runs perfectly and you're perfectly happy with it, or if you start having problems, then you're looking at, well, do I pay the $80 for the extension so then I can start using the ticket system and search their forum and find out issues and problem solve for myself, or, you know, or get the developer to help you fix your issue. Yeah, and quite often you get a more professional look if you've paid the money and have the professional version, which can be important. But I think the other thing about buying them is that these people that are building them and offering them to us for free and selling them to us are all part of this Joomla community, and some people are trying to make a living from it and feed their kids and cats and dogs. So it's important that if they've put the effort in and the time to build something that's really fantastic. I know some of them I'm just, you know, so happy to hand over the money. I'm so impressed with the work that they've done and the service that they offer and the support that they give me, that you think, yes, I'm definitely happy to pay the money. So the next part of it is, when you're looking at an extension, how do you know that it will work for you? So the simplest point of that is you might find, you do a search and you find this extension, it does exactly what you want, but then you discover that it only runs on Joomla 1.5. They haven't built it into that. You know, this is dating so quickly. I wrote this in about October, November, this thing. I'm thinking, it's already, you know, things are moving along so fast. I think that's happening less and less. More and more people are updating. There's more stuff available in 2.5. If there was some useful extension in 1.5 and the developer's not up to keeping it up to date and doing the work to convert it up to the newer versions, someone else is probably picking it up and creating a new extension that has a similar functionality, and it's all moving ahead at a rate of knots. But yes, that can, yeah, you get an error message pretty quickly if you try to install the wrong package on the wrong version of Joomla. It just says, can't load XML file, or get some error message. So you work out pretty quickly that you've chosen the wrong one. So yeah, interestingly, yeah, in Joomla version 3, they haven't got the version number anywhere on the page at this point. Or maybe I was looking at, just glimpsed something at the end of Brian's presentation. I think it might be there, but you have to switch it on. It was a. It is down the bottom right-hand corner. Okay, I've missed it. Yeah, so that's where it shows it in Joomla 1.5, and I'm so used to looking there that I couldn't even see it in Joomla 2.5 because on my laptop screen I probably had to scroll down to see it because it's sitting in the bottom, in the footer. So that's how to instantly see which version of Joomla that you're running, and you really want to see whether you're running 2.5.8 or whatever we're up to, and know whether you should be doing an upgrade. There's plenty of things like ticks and crosses that can show you that these days as well. But the other thing is, some extensions you look at, the more complicated ones, will say this will only run on PHP version 5.3 and higher. And if you're on a server that is running an older version of PHP, it simply won't load and it won't run. So sometimes you can save yourself a bit of time by paying attention to that and knowing what version you're running. So you can find out that inside Joomla, you can also find out inside your hosting control panel. So in Joomla 1.5, oh, is anyone who's still using Joomla 1.5? Have I wasted my time on these? Oh, yeah, good. I mean, yeah, I'm sort of half and half at the moment, and you know, now I've installed Joomla 3. It's just so gorgeous to look at. I want to move everything over to that now. Yeah, so you can go to your system info. No point in me pointing at that. System info in Joomla 2 in 1.5. Whoop. I'm pushing the wrong button. There we go, system 2.5. It is in site system information, and then you can see the different versions of PHP. I think this is on the Rockin server, so yes, I'm running on a server that's running 5.3.15. Lots of jargon if you're not a computer person, lots of numbers and things, but I guess it's really only a matter of understanding the part of it that's important, that if they've said, if you can go to this page and yours says PHP version 5.2 point something, and it's saying I've got to have 5.3 or higher, you're wasting your time installing that one on your site. Anyone using a Plesk hosting panel? Poor you. Yeah. I've got clients, I have had clients that have used Plesk and I've been forced to use it. Gosh, it was difficult. cPanel is much nicer. But yeah, it really depends on how well the host's got different things set up for running Joomla. But most of the things I use are basically your website domain name /cPanel, and then it takes you to whatever the string is that you need to be and whatever sort of security that you're running when you log onto that level of, you know, higher than your website more or less. But other places sort of take control of it and have a completely different URL that they give you to get access to that fairly important level of the hosting, so that you're not likely to do anything by accident, or people are less likely to hack you. Probably depends on what kind of security they're running inside their own server, whether they think /cPanel is safe or not safe. That's another area of expertise. I leave that to other people. So this is a picture of a cPanel, and you can see the list down the side that's saying the SQL version, the PHP version, even the Apache version, so you know this is an Apache piece of software running on the server. Which, I don't know, in my experience they mostly are. It's the Plesk ones that are Windows or something. Someone else will know. Oh, okay, yeah.
I think only in majority Australia they provide a hosting for NAT registry. They don't have an Apache server.
Yeah, good. So, testing it out. There's sort of two ways of thinking about it. When you're running something for a client, or what you consider your production site or your live site, you're very protective of that. That's what, especially if you're a shop and you're selling things, you don't want to bring the shop down and prevent your client or yourself from losing money because the shop's not running, which is why it's a very good idea to run a test site. That being said, if you're a small operation and you've got a live site and a test site, you've kind of doubled your workload. But for me, if you're learning Joomla, then that can be good because you've done it once on the test site, then you do it again on the live site, and you've just cemented the tasks that you've done and the process that you're going through in your mind because you've done it 2 times in a row. So it can be a good thing. But
is there a good clone extension? I can't find one.
Yes, I'm about to tell you about that. Yeah.
That's where you have to transfer it to a new directory or transfer it to a web server.
Yes.
What I want something that's like transparently, you can just push it over and say go live.
Okay. I'm got a reseller account on the Rockin hosts, which is a particular web server company, and they've got Joomla things built in. So when I'm on my cPanel, there's a little button that says Joomla Utilities. When I go in there, I've got a clone button. I can hit clone. I think I've used it once to check that it works. So it'll copy the database, copy the file system, and set you up another one with one click of the button. But that's because that host, which is the Joomla host, they're the people who actually host the Joomla website, joomla.org. No, not .au, just joomla.org. So yeah, it's a server. I suppose it's outside of the Joomla realm. It's a server level concept. But yeah, I mean, if you've got to go into your cPanel, create new databases with passwords, run the Joomla, do your Akeeba backup. I'll keep going with this because I'll get into that. The big thing with backup, you can run Akeeba backup and it goes, yep, fine, successful, but you don't know you've got backup until you've restored. So if you haven't restored successfully, you haven't got backup. Because, the typical story is, yes, all these backups are going through, you're getting all these messages weekly, it's running automatically saying, yes, the site's backed up, the site's backed up. Then something goes wrong and you go back to your last Wednesday backup and you try to restore it and there's a corrupted zip file or something. And all that time you've been thinking everything's okay and it's not okay. So you kind of got to problem solve all those things when it's not a problem. So that if the problem occurs, you're all ready to go. And that's what's good about doing the clone yourself, is you're forced to do this extra task of installing Akeeba backup, running the backup, downloading the software that enables you to restore, and then doing your subdirectory, creating new databases, restoring it into your new position. Really good experience for when something does go wrong. So then that gives you your backup site, which might be, I do it two ways. I usually can do /test or actually create the subdomain and do test.yourdomainname.com or whatever. Different ways of achieving the same thing. Sometimes for people, it might be if people are really frightened of using Joomla or that they're going to break the site, it's good to have the test site and let them rip on it and say to them, you can do whatever you like on the test site. That's not the live site. Break it to your heart's content and therefore give them the confidence to click on buttons and noodle around in it and teach themselves how to, or feel confident in using what's there. So test sites are good. I don't know why that one doesn't line up. I can see it all right. So once you've got that test site, that's where you kind of do go like mad, like the kid in the lolly shop. You grab an extension, stick it in there, find out what the extension does, whether it's doing what you want. Maybe you might reject a couple before you come to the one that you think this is worth it. Quite often it's a compromise. You might be, you want a particular piece of functionality and none of them quite do exactly what you want. And so really you just sort of tried three things. None of them are exactly what you want, but then you're just picking the best that's the closest to what you need. But yes, doubled your workload. But the other way of doing it is have your live site, run your backup, know that your backup works, and have that sitting there. Then download new extensions, install them on your live site, test them. If that's all good, you've finished your work. If it's not all good, then you've got to do the restore thing and bring your live site back. So there's sort of those two ways of deciding which way to go. And I suppose it depends on you and how much spare time you've got and your workflow and how much you like mucking around on computer screens looking at Joomla, which we all must do because we're all here. So, is that all I had? I can't remember. It's too long ago. I just got my business cards done, so yes, here I have all my pretty pictures with Mount Buninyong. My house looks almost due east, slightly to the side of Mount Buninyong, big picture windows looking straight at that picture. But my friend who's a graphic designer has taken out the fire tower, the small communications tower and the very large communications tower that sit on that mountain. So it's not actually a true representation. You could say it's Mount Buninyong at 1902 or something before they built anything. Yeah, the historical view. How did I go with time? It goes pretty quick. I think to myself, gee, there's a heck of a lot of slides there. But I thought it was more important to leave you time for questions. Yes?
Yeah. Okay, so talking about extensions, we've got backup site. Is there an extension that will then take your backup site, your dev site, and put it live? Other way around, rather than you have to go through the whole rigmarole.
All right. I'll tell you how I do it. If you've got Well, if your dev site's, well, whereabouts is your development site?
Well, my dev site it's on the same hosting as the...
Okay. So basically you're looking at...
On this particular one.
Yeah, yeah. So you got your domain name and your root. You're looking at your root directory on your domain, which is public HTML. So if you're not working in public HTML, you're sort of hidden from the rest of the world and people can't see it because they won't know the string to get to your website. It's as simple as zipping up the file system in your subdirectory, moving that zipped file to your root directory, so public_HTML, unzipping it, go to your configuration file and alter the file settings. So your configuration file will say your temp files are in /development temp /development whatever. Yeah. So you've only got to change. You don't have to do anything to your database. Your database is your database. Don't worry about it. You're just moving the file system from hidden to live by moving it into public HTML.
It's one of the problems that I've got is on two of the websites that I've got. They're on crazy domains.
Oh yes.
It only runs PHP. Two doesn't even acknowledge Joomla other than 1.5.
And you know what everyone's advice will just simply be, you know, don't use it. But if that's where you are, that's where you are.
If the client's already there, I can't.
Yeah, I know. And I've
I've got one client that's paid 15 years posting on this.
oh no. There's kind of I've got T-shirt for you for a great question. T-shirts for good questions, and I got 2 T-shirts to give away. So another great question. Yeah, so that doesn't really help you, but yeah, does that make sense to you that is the simplest way to not actually run a keeper backup? But then you've got to realise that if the file system's still sitting there in your subdirectory, I'd delete it because then you've got your live site, and your live site's pointing at that database, and then it all comes down to the database because then you've got 2 file systems pointing to the same database, and if you start editing or mucking around in the subdirectory, then it can get messy.
That was what was really, because I use a keeper for other sites because the PHP supports it.
Yeah. So
Just to roll back the Kiva version, find a lower version that's going to work.
yes, true enough. Yeah.
Yeah, I do have traces of mine. It's called J.
Oh no, you won't have to go back that far that early. It could be simple as sending an email to Nicholas and saying, I'm in this terrible situation, have you still got... I don't know whether you'll be able to find on his site versions that are that old. Yeah, okay, so there are archived versions of the Keeper Backup that for those older versions of PHP. Yeah, I've got one, and you've got to, when you see the little pictures telling you that in 2.5 that you've got to update it, but I can't update it because its PHP version's not high enough. I love that he does that to stop me being a fool. Where were we? Yeah.
Excuse me, I'm very new to all this.
Oh, sorry.
Terminology exactly, but they were talking about older versions of Joomla with the extensions having to include Java packs because Joomla doesn't have them in them where version 3 does.
jQuery.
Sorry,
Yeah.
that's exactly. So
Yeah.
if you're now starting up with Joomla 3 and you're taking extensions that work but are older versions, does that mean they also bring in the jQuery and you double up as well?
It won't. If you've got a version that says that it's for Joomla 2.5, it won't run on Joomla version 3. Yeah, it'll stop it because of exactly those kinds of things. Yeah, I've recently had that jQuery conflict and stopped my template working, and the template people just said, "You're running another version of jQuery, you know." And they gave me a few pointers to try and pinpoint where in the code or what exactly was loading. And it was just, I didn't have time to, it would have taken me hours because I wasn't that technical, and I guessed it was going to be one of the Google add-ins that I had, and so I just basically started turning things off until it worked again. And then some little add-on I'd put in that I thought was useful. So then I decided, and it wasn't with it. Then I decided that I didn't really need it anymore, that it was causing so many other headaches or whatever it was. You know, when I've used weather, it's because when you first build a website and you want to show your family and friends, look at this website, I've got it up there and it's live, and you've got no data to put on it. What's the point of having a website, ta-da, to the world but you've got no info. So yeah, the weather in your home city is not. That's why they're popular.
I did a website for retirement village, and that was actually a specific requirement.
Yeah, they wanted to know.
Meeting with a guy
Yep.
yesterday.
Wait a minute.
He
Yeah.
actually said, I want weather because it's going to get more people to my site. I said, no, it's not.
People have some funny ideas. Yep.
Is there an easy way to run a shop? Is it quite easy to run an online shop using an extension?
Yes, they are complicated pieces of software. So Joomla is complicated. The shop can be almost on the same level of complication.
But can it be easy?
Yes, well, is it Max? Yeah, I think Max Lyman recommends. Thank you. What's it? Mijo. Yeah. M-I-J-O shop. That is the recommended one. Yes, it's written off some very good code called OpenCart, and Mijo shop brings it into the Joomla work, and that's the one. Yeah, everyone's recommending. When there was a few good things for Joomla 1.5, Akiva Backup creator Nicholas was having some sort of problem on something where I was running VirtueMart, and his comment was, "Good friends don't let their friends run VirtueMart." He was because the code's ugly and messy, and because he's such a perfectionist with his code, he couldn't cope. But yeah, VirtueMart I think must be an excellent extension. It's used extensively in Joomla 1.5. I'm not sure where it went with 2.5. I stopped using it and started using other things in 2.5. No. Yeah, when it went from 1.5 to 2.5, then I was at a loss of what to use, and I started downloading extensions. Well, difficulty, because, $100, not sure if I want to use it or not, or whether the client will want it. Yeah, and then...
You just take money via PayPal or something like that?
For us in Australia, that's the best way to do it, yeah.
Has anyone tried a simple caddy?
Yeah.
I'm sure I've installed that and not been all that happy. It depends on... I think it's very simple.
I was really impressed with it just for its simplicity for selling maybe one or two items.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
Would you recommend Community Builder or Joom Social or 3.0? And are there 3.0 functions that duplicate?
They're pretty extensive pieces of software. I don't know that either of them are 3.0 ready yet. I haven't looked. Yeah, I haven't. I don't know the answer to that question. And it's almost personal taste. I started using Community Builder, and I'm used to Community Builder, and I'm used to the way it lays out and how I noodle around in all its parameters and everything, because it's quite complicated. But because I've used it a lot, I tend to go in and remember fairly quickly where I've got to go to do a particular thing. I used Joom Social once, and did the downloaded, paid for it, showed it to the client. He just said, way too complicated, we don't want to go there. And then I contacted them and said, client's not happy, you can have my money back. And they gave me my money back. Because I used the 30-day thing, and they were quite happy with that. So, not sure about that. I think if you want to run Community Builder or Joom Social, I'd go Joomla 2.5, not expect to...
Just one other question, and that is, has anybody used sort of preceding, when you seed a forum with fake users? The worst thing is that when a new user comes in and there's nobody there, they won't leave a message. But if there's already 1,000 false users there, they're more likely to start participating.
Wow, never know that.
Does anybody have any experience with, it's called preceding a forum?
I've never had to do that, I suppose. I live in communities, you send out emails and you get them to sign up with a big stick.
Excuse me. Sorry.
Yes?
Sorry. The next Tuesday,